Hello, it's Nikki. I hope you enjoyed yesterday's episode. I have some more for you today. So today I'd love to introduce you the next 4 people. We're kicking off with Suzie Bartle, who is the founder of Well Spirited PR. And even though this episode didn't go live first, it was actually the first ever podcast interview that I recorded. And we were in a room at Century, this members club in central London. And it was very enlightening as I was recording this because we were sitting opposite each other on a big long table. And I kept looking going, oh my goodness, we're actually doing this thing that I felt like I'd been planning behind the scenes for so long. So that episode will always be very special to me. Next, I'm talking with Silvia, talking with Silvia del Corso, who is the founder of Pink SEO. And her story is really interesting because she came from Italy, she brought her 2 young children, and she started up a new life in the UK. And I really love that sense of adventure about her and knowing how to crack on, to find a way. She shows such tenacity and that sense of thinking, right, well, here we go. We want to make this happen, so let's do that. The third is with Nicola Washington. Now, you may see some of her posts over at Don't Buy Her Flowers because she works as part of their social media team, but also she writes a lot herself over at Too Much Mothering Information. And her business really came out of a lifestyle change and really listening to what was going to work for her and where she wanted to go next. And the 4th one today is with Zoe Blaskey, who you may know because she has her own very successful podcast too called Motherkind. And I was actually a guest on her podcast very early on. I think I'm something like episode 12 or 10 or 14 or something like that. And to watch her go from strength to strength, it's just been wonderful to see. So lots to get stuck into today. Enjoy, and I'll see you tomorrow with another 4. Bye.
In terms of success for you, how have you made your career and the way that you earn money work for you and your lifestyle?
It's a really good question, Nikki. Again, no coincidences. This morning I was at hospital because I have a very serious illness called Crohn's disease, which a lot of people don't know about because you can't see it. And I was diagnosed with that when I graduated from university, and at the time it was, it wasn't a shock to me. I was almost like, oh great, I can start drinking again now. I know what's wrong with me. And I was due to go to Botswana about a month later, and I was like, oh please, can I just have a doctor's note to go to Botswana? As you do, casual place to be going.
Yeah.
And,
why were you going to Botswana?
Well, I was because I just graduated and my friend lived in Botswana.
Oh, okay,
sure.
I just thought I'd check. Yeah, lovely.
Well, it's also Prince Harry's favourite place to hang out.
It is.
But anyway, so yeah, I do have that illness, and it then I did really well in my career, luckily, before it crippled me. And I when it did cripple me, which was when I was like in my mid-20s, and I was hospitalised for weeks, and I was on benefits, and I was told that I would never work again. And or if I did work, it would be like in a coffee shop or, not under pressure, which PR does have a reputation for being a lot of pressure, and it's a busy environment. And so when you ask the question around how do I get it to fit in my lifestyle, that's exactly it. So I do have days where I'm really tired. I don't want to have to explain my hospital appointments to people. And that is it. So I work to my own schedule and I work to my own energy levels, and I get to lead a really rich life without having to feel like an ill person.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting when people, and we all have it in our lives, that one person says something like, all you're ever going to do is work in a coffee shop, or you're not good at maths, or you're not the type of person who does that kind of thing. And those statements can be really damaging and stay with us throughout our lives. And so I just commend you so much, the fact that you were like, no, I'm doing this, but I'm figuring it out and I'm going to do it my way as well.
Thank you.
I would love to know about that resilience that you clearly have. I speak to a lot of business owners, and sometimes, well, through the nature of it, that your business journey, however successful you are, it does have peaks and troughs. You do have busy times and quieter times, and then you have times where you really have to pivot or change direction, or just go in a way that perhaps you weren't ready for, or you didn't think would happen. Were there any tools that you used to get through that process of things being hard and that kept coming up again and again, in terms of just stuff that you came back to through the difficult times?
Well, basically, this is a dream, and I decided to follow it again because, as I was saying, I tried to be employed, but there was no chance I could find an employment that let me stay next to them. And for myself, this is a priority, to be next to them. So every time I feel I am struggling and things are not easy enough, I keep telling myself that I'm doing this for two main reasons. For myself, because this is something I really love doing, and having my own business is something that's given to me so much more satisfaction than not being working for somebody else, because this is my own business, my clients, I am helping them, and I feel this is so much more enriching for me, and because it's a continuous experience and I'm growing every second. I'm doing something new and think I'm somebody who likes doing more or less the same things, like some kind of reassuring habits, but now everything is new and I love every second of it, even if sometimes I really tremble and I'm shaking for fear, but I just dive into the unknown, and I love it because I'm having a lot of good experiences. I do it for them because I can organize my time more or less as I need to, because I can work when they're at school.
Also, with Instagram, I know you love this community as well.
I do.
What has that community given you, and how useful has it been for you?
Yeah, I mean, incredibly useful in lots of ways. I mean, support initially, just that sort of emotional crutch that you need when you're absolutely exhausted and everything feels like it's going wrong, and you hate your other half and he can't breathe because you hate the way he breathes, and you know, and all of that stuff. And so Instagram, and I do cringe slightly, even though my job is now to do with social media. I do sort of think how sad that this is what it's come to, that you find more support online than you get from people in real life. But I actually think that the facelessness sometimes of social media allows people to open up more.
Yeah.
And it's that same thing that, you know, the conversation, the big conversations always happen in the car, because you don't have to look into somebody's eyes.
Yes.
Or, you know, doing the washing up, you know, that's when the big conversations happen, because you haven't got to make eye contact and feel uncomfortable and have to deal with that as well as your own thoughts and emotions. And I just think that, you know, social media really does offer an opportunity to be really open and share things that you think without that immediacy of having to face somebody and look into somebody's eyes and talk about this really difficult stuff. So support was a huge part of it initially. And then sort of, coming up to 2 years since I started my blog. It'll be 2 years in March. 2 years in February. Gosh, it's like next week, 2 weeks or something like that.
I'm baking a cake as we speak.
Yeah. I need a big celebration. There won't be a big celebration. I might remember to say something and say, oh, it's 2 years, but then, no, there'll be no
I
celebration.
look forward to the post, which is like 10 lessons I learned since having my blog.
Oh yes, you can. I'm definitely doing that now. You've said that. Nikki said I should do it.
And here's a muslin that you may enjoy.
Yes, these are the best ones on the market. They're so much softer than the other ones.
Exactly.
Yeah. But no, and I think since then, I found like-minded people. I people who think the same way that I do about politics. And I've not always had that. I think politics is something that Brits are really bad at talking about.
Yes.
And if you try to talk about it, and especially as a woman, you're too serious. You're deluded about the way the world can be. You've just got to accept that this is the way the world is, and you're an idealist. Those sorts of things that very much undermine and demean you if you want to have serious conversations. And online, I found other women, particularly, who were just as serious and slightly earnest as I am about a lot of the issues that I really care about. And so I feel like I've got a community around me that has given me confidence to share my thoughts, to share my ideas, because I think, well, I'm not the only one who thinks like this. No. So I feel like whenever it does verge on sort of ego feeding, but whenever I share my ideas and I do get that feedback, it's not just about me, I feel good now because people agree with me. It's not just about that. It's also, I feel good now because I know there are other people out there who think like me, and who care in the same way that I care.
I find it optimistic for our children, and that, there is possibility, and they will be challenging things that have gone before us, and that's the world that we want to bring them up in, surely.
Yeah, and how easy it makes it to connect with other people, and then the momentum that can build. I mean, it's all over the place at the moment, isn't it, with the Me Too and the Time's Up, the Women's March and all of that stuff, and you think, this is significant. This isn't just, social media gets such a bad name, but actually it can be very powerful in bringing people together for a good cause. And I say that bearing in mind the dark side, because I am familiar with the dark side, but I just think it also offers so much that it is an important force to be reckoned with now.
So I guess what were the clues that you thought, okay, I actually need to do this? Because I know there's a lot of talk about, I've had so many ideas, or I would love to start a business or a project. How did you have that confirmation for yourself of, okay, I actually need to do this?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because it's a bit of a joke amongst my friends and family, because I do have about 2 new business ideas a week. I'm incredibly creative and entrepreneurial.
You've got so much free time on your hands.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so easy.
So I guess to start with, when I thought about this, I thought maybe this is just another idea, because I have so many, which I now know is a really good thing. I just needed to channel them. What really happened was I totally believe in being guided by something bigger than me, which sounds really woo-woo, but actually it isn't. I think life is always opening doors for us, shutting doors for us, giving us little breadcrumbs to follow. They're always there. It's just whether we're looking for them or not.
And that can be something very basic of, I just don't get a good feeling about that person, or I don't feel like we're aligned, or something's telling me, or I've got stomachache when I have this conversation, and it shows up in many different ways, doesn't it?
You're absolutely right. So it's about tuning into that. So I had this idea, and I didn't call it Motherkind then, it was this idea about well-being for mums. And I just asked for a bit of guidance, and I said to life, to universe, well, it really doesn't matter what we call it. I said, I wonder if this is right for me, and help me to be guided if this is the right path. And what happened was unbelievable course of events where every time I doubted or questioned myself, something very overt would happen that pushed me and told me, this is the right path and this is needed. So one example which I'll give you, I was having a real wobble with it about even starting to think about it. So this was a year ago and it's only 4 months old. So you can see the amount of time and procrastination it took me to get live. And I was thinking, I don't even know I'm thinking about this. I don't know if this is needed and who am I, and all, a lot of self-doubt was creeping in. And I went to a dinner with lots of Insta mums, and it was great. And I happened to sit next to Clemmy Telford, who is a huge mum blogger and a friend of a friend. And we were asked at this dinner to share something that we were going to affirm to ourselves. And I said that I wanted to focus on how things felt over how they looked, which is how I try and live my life. And I left that dinner and I didn't think anything else of it. And in January, so the year 2017 that I desperately wanted to launch Motherkind as it now is, but was wobbling. And I saw that Clemmy, who has, incredible amount of followers and she's incredible, she had shared what I'd said. And she had said, she said that I was wise and that it had resonated with her and lots of others. And that, I just took that, I really grabbed onto it and I thought, this is something, nudging me in this direction. So I just kept going. And every time that I would have a wobble, something unbelievable, to the point of getting Marianne Williamson as my first podcast guest, something unbelievable would happen. And, I'd heard about flow, I'd read about it a lot. I had never experienced it from a business perspective, or a project perspective. And with Motherkind, I've absolutely experienced that, where things have flowed. So that's how I know that it's the right path.
I would love to talk about flow, actually, because it's a reference that I use a lot. And I guess training as an actor, I'm very in touch with my body because I have to know myself well before I work on a character. I have to connect with the parts of me that feel more like this kind of thing. And finding flow in my business and my life is something that I'm always checking in with, whether I'm on, whether I'm off, whether I'm kind of got one foot in or whatever it might be. And also when opportunities come along, how do you do that for you? What does it mean? And how do you get back on track when you feel like you've gone slightly off flow?
Yeah, so I think there's two big things. The first one that we've already talked about is getting to know my mind. Because when I'm stuck in my head, and you've been talking about getting into the body a lot, when I'm stuck in my head, there really is no flow, because I'm going to try and manage and control. And when I'm trying to manage and control, that blocks flow. You can't have flow and be trying to control. So that's the second thing that helps me get flow is putting in the actions, doing the footwork, as we call it in the recovery movement, and then handing over the results and just trusting that, if I send that email and I don't get a response, I just trust. Yeah. I'm not meant to. And I'll go on to the next thing. Yeah. What I won't do is resend that 30 times, because that's not flow. That's me trying to control. So I'll let it go. And then, if something comes back to me, I will just trust. And I think that's where that's really been the big difference with Motherkind, as opposed to maybe some of my corporate, is that I'm really able to just trust in the journey of it and trust in the flow of it.
How do you trust if you're not getting the results as quickly as you want?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know the answer, and I don't know if I do, but so we touched on comparison, and I guess in the social media, digital world, we know a lot about people's lives. We know the kind of houses that they live in. We know what they have for breakfast. We know what they're doing. And sometimes people talk about money or fancy holidays or whatever it might be. And so, especially for my clients who are starting businesses, they may be in that early stage of it's not happening quick enough, or I spent all this time creating this one thing and nobody read it apart from my mum and my cat, and that was it. So what sort of practical tools do you use to keep trusting?
Yeah, I really get that, and I think it's such a good question, and I think my response is quite spiritual, and I guess because it has to be, because we're so conditioned that to want more and more and more and more. And I think, you know, it's such a big subject, I know, and it's a big thing to talk about, but sometimes the freedom in life comes from the acceptance that the peace and the happiness we're craving, it doesn't come from getting more and more and more and more and more. So I think the first practical tool is being grateful for what we've already got.
Yeah.
So energetically, if we're not appreciating what we've got, it's really difficult for us to get more. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'd say is that sometimes we get what we need and not what we want.
A lesson.
The lessons, right? So another effing growth opportunity,
yes,
as I like to call them. So we may really want to sell out that event. We might have put it on our vision board. You know, we might have done all the right things, but actually we sell, as you say, 2 tickets. Now, I think with an example like that, we are at a crossroads, and I think we have an opportunity to step into frustration, anger even, self-criticism, thinking that we're failures, which, you know, is so easy to do. In a lot of ways, that's how we've been conditioned. I think the other way, and it's definitely what I try and do, not immediately, but within, 24, 48 hours, is think, what's the lesson here? And look within for that lesson. So I will ask myself questions. This is why journaling is so important in business and personal life. What energy was I bringing to that event? Was I totally aligned with it? What could the lesson be here?
Yes.
And it might be anything. But I think, I deeply believe through my own experiences and those of others that life always gives us what we need to grow.
Yeah.
It isn't always pretty.
The terrible boyfriends.
Right.
The crop top that we wore in the 90s.
The kid we can't control.
Yeah.
All of it. It's all here to help us grow. And I think, it's a misconception that we can put things on our vision board and they will come to us, because we have to do the work. And that's why I think, it's not easy, this stuff. It's easier to go to the anger and the victim and the denial. It's easier. But long term, I don't think it is. I think it's harder to live like that.
And life is not supposed to be perfect every step of the way, because sometimes in ugly moments or in difficult times, you come out the other side and you have that strength